Culture refers to the shared practices, beliefs, values, norms, and material objects that define a group of people. It encompasses everything from language and traditions to art and technology. Objective versus subjective. Objective perspectives aim to be neutral and unbiased, while subjective perspectives are influenced by personal opinions, feelings, and experiences. Cultural anthropology focuses on understanding the cultural aspects of human societies, including rituals, traditions, and everyday practices. Archaeology, the study of human history, through excavation and analysis of artifacts, structures, and other physical remains. Cultural materialism, a theory emphasizing the material aspects, economic, environmental, technological, as the foundation of societal development. Primatology, the study of primates to understand human evolution, behavior, and biology. Ethnocentrism, the tendency to evaluate other cultures using one's own culture as a standard, often leading to bias and prejudice. Cultural relativism, advocates for understanding cultures on their own terms, without imposing external judgments. Human variation, the study of genetic and physical differences among human populations to understand diversity and adaptation. Ethnology, the comparative study of different cultures to identify patterns and universal principles. Physical anthropology explores the biological and physiological aspects of humans and their ancestors. Linguistic anthropology examines the relationship between language and culture, focusing on how language shapes communication and identity. Participant observation, a qualitative research method where the anthropologist immerses themselves in a community to observe and participate in daily life. Evolution, the process through which species undergo genetic changes over generations, leading to the development of new traits and adaptations. Proposed by Charles Darwin as natural selection. It explains biological diversity and human origins.
Key figures: Jane Goodall, known for her groundbreaking work with chimpanzees, highlighting their behavior and social structures. Margaret Mead explored gender roles and cultural patterns in different societies. Charles Darwin formulated the theory of evolution through natural selection, foundational to biological anthropology. Louis Leakey made significant contributions to understanding human origins through paleoanthropologic research. Noam Chomsky revolutionized linguistics with his theory of universal grammar, connecting language to cognition. Dian Fossey, renowned primatologist who studied and protected mountain gorillas in Rwanda, raising awareness about their conservation. Introduction to sociology. Socialization, the lifelong process through which individuals learn and internalize the norms, values, and roles of their society. Anticipatory socialization, preparing for future roles or changes. Agents of socialization, key influences like family, peers, schools, and media that shape an individual's development and integration into society. Norms, social rules and expectations that guide behavior in a society. Conflict theory, a framework emphasizing power struggles and inequality, particularly between different social classes. Structural functionalism views society as a system of interrelated parts that work together to maintain stability and order. Symbolic interactionism focuses on how individuals create and interpret meanings through social interactions. Values, shared beliefs about what is good, desirable, and important within a society. Primary, secondary agents. Primary agents, for example, while secondary agents, for example, schools, workplaces shape later experiences. Feminist sociology examines gender inequality and advocates for social change. Social influence, the ways in which individuals change their behavior to meet the demands of a social environment, including conformity, compliance, and obedience. Isolates feral children who have been severely neglected or raised without typical human interaction, providing insights into the importance of socialization for development, such as practicing behaviors or adopting attitudes in advance. Family influence early development. Key figures: Emile Durkheim examines social cohesion and the role of social facts. George Herbert Mead explored the development of self through social interaction. Karl Marx highlighted class conflict and economic inequality as central to societal dynamics. Unit 2, Introduction to Psychology. Key concepts: classical conditioning, a learning process where a neutral stimulus becomes associated with a meaningful stimulus, eliciting a conditioned response, for example, Pavlov's dogs. Operant conditioning, learning through consequences, where behaviors are reinforced or punished, for example, E.F. Skinner's experiments. Defense mechanisms, unconscious psychological strategies, for example, denial, repression used to protect the ego from anxiety or distress. Hierarchy of needs, Maslow's pyramid outlining human motivations, from basic needs: food, safety, to self-actualization, realizing one's full potential. Cognitive development, Piaget's theory describing how children develop logical thinking through stages, for example, sensoromotor, pre-operational. Psychosocial development, Erickson's model of 8 stages, each characterized by a psychosocial conflict, for example, trust versus mistrust. Unconscious, Freud's concept of a part of the mind, housing thoughts and memories outside of conscious awareness. Ego, superego, Freud's structural model of personality, with the id focusing on desires, the superego on morality, and the ego balancing the two. Logotherapy, Viktor Frankl's therapy focusing on finding meaning in life, even in suffering. False memories, incorrect or distorted recollections of events, often influenced by suggestion or misinformation. Client-centered therapy, Carl Rogers' humanistic approach emphasizing empathy, active listening, and unconditional positive regard to foster personal growth. Collective unconscious, Jung's theory of a shared, universal reservoir of memories, symbols, and archetypes across humanity. Psychoanalysis, Freud's therapeutic approach, exploring unconscious conflicts through techniques like free association and dream analysis. Archetypes, universal, symbolic patterns, for example, hero, mother found in myths, art, and the collective unconscious, as described by Carl Jung. Personality, the unique combination of traits, behaviors, and thoughts that define an individual's character. Perception, the process by which individuals interpret sensory information to understand their environment. Personality tests, assessments, designed to measure individual traits and predict behavior, such as the MBTI or Big Five inventory. Key figures, Ivan Pavlov, pioneer of classical conditioning. Sigmund Freud, founder of psychoanalysis, introducing concepts like the unconscious mind, id, ego, and superego. Jean Piaget studied children's cognitive development, proposing distinct stages. Albert Bandura, known for social learning theory, emphasizing observation and imitation. Elizabeth Loftus investigated memory, particularly the malleability of eyewitness testimony and false memories. Viktor Frankl developed logotherapy, emphasizing meaning as a primary motivator. Carl Jung explored the collective unconscious and archetypes, expanding psychoanalytic theory. Erik Erikson developed the psychosocial development theory, highlighting conflicts across the lifespan. B.F. Skinner advanced operant conditioning, studying behavior modification through reinforcement. Carl Rogers promoted client-centered therapy, emphasizing empathy and unconditional positive regard. Abraham Maslow created the hierarchy of needs, focusing on self-actualization. Unit 3, Anthropology and Me, rites of passage, ceremonies marking significant life transitions, for example, coming of age, marriage, sex versus gender, biological differences, sex, contrasted with socially constructed roles and identities, gender. Cultural appropriation, the adoption of elements from another culture, often without understanding or respect, leading to ethical concerns. Matrilineal, patrilineal, systems of tracing lineage and inheritance through the mother's or father's side, respectively. Types of families, structures include nuclear parents and children, extended including other relatives, and blended families. Polygamy, a marital structure involving more than one spouse. Gender identity, how individuals perceive and express themselves regarding gender, which may or may not align with biological sex. Alternate gender identities, cultures recognizing more than two genders, including roles like two-spirit individuals in some indigenous cultures. Functions of marriage include economic alliances, reproduction, social stability, and establishing familial bonds. Cultural diffusion, the spread of cultural elements, ideas, practices, technologies from one group to another through interaction and exchange. When anthropologists intervene, anthropologists should intervene when ethical considerations, such as protecting human rights or preserving endangered cultures, arise. However, interventions must respect the autonomy and values of the studied community. Globalization, the increasing interconnectedness and interdependence of the world through cultural exchange, trade, and technology. It impacts traditions, economies, and identities worldwide, sometimes leading to cultural homogenization or resistance. Coming of age, the process of transitioning from childhood to adulthood, often marked by specific rituals, cultural practices, or milestones that signify maturity. In different cultures, this may involve ceremonies, tests, or other social recognitions. For males, it might include rites of passage or achieving certain responsibilities, while for females, it can often be linked to sexual maturation or social roles. Female-male identities, the societal roles, expectations, and personal perceptions of what it means to be male or female. These identities are shaped by biological, cultural, and individual factors and vary across cultures and historical periods. In many cultures, gender roles are learned through socialization and may be fluid, allowing for both traditional and non-traditional gender expressions. Cultural diffusion, the spread of cultural beliefs, practices, and objects from one society to another. This can occur through various means such as trade, migration, or media. Cultural diffusion results in the blending of traditions, languages, technologies, and other aspects of culture between different groups of people. Bilineal refers to a system where ancestry is traced through both the mother's and father's sides of the family. Sociology and Me, social identity, How individuals define themselves in relation to groups they belong to. Prejudice and discrimination. Prejudice refers to biased attitudes, while discrimination involves actions based on those biases. Systemic discrimination. Institutional practices that create or maintain inequality. In-group, out-group dynamics. The tendency to favor one's own group, while marginalizing others. Conformity and obedience. Adjusting behaviors to fit social norms, for example. Ashe's conformity experiments and following authority, for example. Milgram's study. Groupthink. The tendency for cohesive groups to make flawed decisions due to pressure to conform. Ethical issues. Surveillance and profiling raise. Concerns about privacy and fairness. Stereotypes. Oversimplified. Generalizations about groups that often lead to discrimination. Causes of discrimination and prejudice. Socialization and learned behaviors. Stereotypes and biases. Economic or social competition. Group identity and in-group versus out-group dynamics. Historical inequalities and power imbalances. Deviance. Violation of social norms or rules. Can be seen as a response to societal pressure or social inequality. Varies by culture and context. May result in social sanctions or punishment. Social role theory. People behave according to societal expectations tied to their roles. Roles are learned and can influence behavior, identity, and relationships. Role conflict occurs when expectations clash between different roles. Solidarity. The sense of unity and connection within a group or society. Mechanical solidarity, based on shared beliefs and values. In traditional societies. Organic solidarity, based on interdependence in complex societies. Frustration-aggression theory. Aggression is the result of frustration caused by blocked goals or unmet needs. The frustration leads individuals to direct aggression towards scapegoats or outgroups. Alienation. The feeling of isolation or disconnection from society or work, often caused by powerlessness, lack of control, or societal change, can lead to disillusionment or deviant behavior. Overt discrimination. Open, direct discrimination against individuals or groups based on race, gender, or other characteristics, can be intentional or institutionalized through laws or policies. Primary, secondary groups. Primary groups, small, intimate groups, family, close friends with strong emotional bonds. Secondary groups, larger, less personal groups, workplaces, social organizations with more formal interactions. Competition theory. Social groups compete for limited resources, power, or status. Competition can lead to conflict, discrimination, and prejudice as groups vie for dominance. Subculture. A group within a larger culture that has distinct values, beliefs, and behaviors. Subcultures may form around shared interests, identities, or lifestyles, for example. Youth subcultures. Religious groups. Unit 4. Psychology and Me. Key concepts. Motivation. The internal and external drives that direct behavior. Intrinsic motivation stems from personal satisfaction, while extrinsic motivation arises from external rewards. Cognitive dissonance. The mental discomfort experienced when holding contradictory beliefs or behaviors, often leading to efforts to reduce the inconsistency. Obedience to authority. The tendency to comply with authority figures, even when actions conflict with personal morals, for example. Milgram's experiments. Stigma. Negative stereotypes and social disapproval directed at individuals, based on perceived differences, such as mental health conditions. Drive reduction theory suggests that behavior is motivated by the desire to reduce internal tensions caused by unmet needs. Intelligence. Cognitive abilities related to reasoning, problem solving, and learning. Intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Motivation from internal satisfaction versus external rewards. Fundamental attribution error. The tendency to attribute others' actions to their character while underestimating situational influences. Twin, triplet. Studies. Research examining genetic and environmental influences on behavior by studying twins and triplets. Stanford Prison Experiment. Zimbardo's study on the psychological effects of perceived power and authority roles. Mental health illness. Conditions that affect emotional, psychological, and social well-being. Heredity. The passing of traits from parents to offspring through genes. Influences physical characteristics, behavior, and potential for certain diseases or conditions. Genetics interact with the environment to shape individuals. IQ intelligence quotient. A measure of a person's intellectual abilities relative to others, often through standardized testing. Historically linked to academic success, but criticized for cultural bias and limiting the definition of intelligence. Can be influenced by genetics and environment, for example. Education, socioeconomic status. Negativity bias. The tendency to give more weight to negative experiences or information than positive ones. Can affect decision-making, emotional responses, and memory. Evolutionary theory suggests it may have been adapted for survival by focusing on threats. External attribution. The belief that external factors, for example, other people, the environment, are responsible for someone's behavior. Contrast to internal attribution, which focuses on personal traits or abilities. Common in situations where outcomes are beyond a person's control. David Reimer experiment. A controversial psychological study involving a boy. David Reimer, who was raised as a girl after a botched circumcision. Conducted by psychologist John Money to explore gender identity and the nature vs nurture debate. The experiment is widely criticized for ethical violations and failure to account for the complexities of gender identity. Environment. External factors, including social, cultural, and physical conditions that influence an individual's behavior and development. Can include family, education, peers, culture, and societal structures. Plays a significant role in shaping personality, behavior, and intelligence. Interacting with genetics. Unethical experiments. Research studies that fail to meet ethical standards, often involving harm, deceit, or lack of consent. Famous examples include the Tuskegee syphilis study, Milgram's obedience experiment, and Stanford prison experiment. Ethical guidelines are now in place to protect participants in research, for example. Informed consent, debriefing. Instinct theory. The idea that behavior is driven by innate biological instincts. Proposes that certain behaviors are hardwired in all humans and animals, such as survival instincts. Criticized for oversimplifying behavior and neglecting the role of learning and environment. Internal attribution. The belief that a person's behavior is due to their own internal factors, such as personality, motives, or abilities. This contrasts with external attribution, which places the cause of behavior on outside influences. Behavioral change model, a framework for understanding how and why individuals change their behaviors. Models often include stages such as awareness, motivation, action, and maintenance, for example. Trans-theoretical model, a health belief model, used in health psychology, marketing, and social change initiatives. Little Albert experiment, a controversial study conducted by John B. Watson and Rosalie Rayner. In 1920, a baby little Albert was conditioned to fear a white rat by pairing it with a loud, frightening noise. The experiment demonstrated classical conditioning, but has been criticized for ethical concerns, including causing unnecessary harm and distress to the child. Key figures: Stanley Milgram explored obedience to authority, showing how people follow orders even when unethical. Philip Zimbardo conducted the Stanford prison experiment, examining the psychological effects of perceived power. Dr. John Money researched gender identity and the effects of socialization. David Reimer, central figure in studies on gender identity, demonstrating the complexity of nature versus nurture. Peter Neubauer was a psychologist known for conducting a controversial twin study that secretly separated twins at birth to study the influence of nature versus nurture, raising significant ethical concerns. John B. Watson, a founder of behaviorism, conducted the Little Albert experiment, demonstrating that emotional responses could be conditioned, but his methods have been widely criticized for ethical reasons. Philip Zimbardo is famous for the Stanford prison experiment, which revealed the power of situational factors and authority over behavior, but it was criticized for causing harm to participants and for its ethical shortcomings. Key ideas and concepts. What is the relationship between sex and gender? Sex refers to the biological characteristics, for example, chromosomes, reproductive anatomy that define individuals as male or female. Gender refers to the social and cultural roles, behaviors, and identities associated with being male or female, which can vary across different cultures and historical periods. While sex is typically assigned at birth, gender is more fluid and can be influenced by socialization and personal identity. What is a family and what are its main functions? A family is a social unit typically consisting of individuals related by blood, marriage, or adoption. Its main functions include socializing children, providing emotional support, offering economic cooperation, and ensuring the continuity of society through reproduction and caregiving. How do stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination form? How are they detrimental to society? Stereotypes are oversimplified generalizations about a group of people, often based on limited or biased information. Prejudice is a preconceived opinion or attitude toward a group, often negative, based on stereotypes. Discrimination is the unfair treatment of individuals based on their group membership, such as race, gender, or religion. These social phenomena can form through socialization, media, and personal experiences. They are detrimental to society by promoting inequality, reducing social cohesion, limiting opportunities for marginalized groups, and fostering conflict. What are some of the ethical issues in each of the social sciences? In psychology, ethical issues include obtaining informed consent, ensuring confidentiality, and avoiding harm to participants, for example, in experiments like the Stanford Prison Experiment or the Little Albert Study. In sociology, ethical concerns involve respecting the privacy and autonomy of individuals studied, as well as avoiding exploitation or harm in research, for example, in observational studies. In anthropology, ethical dilemmas arise in maintaining the integrity of cultural representation, obtaining informed consent from indigenous or vulnerable populations, and ensuring reciprocity in research that benefits both researchers and participants. Across all fields, researchers must adhere to ethical guidelines to protect the well-being of individuals and communities.